On the 14th of June, 2005, 10-year-old Kaylee Brooks sat in a ride car and smiled. In 37 seconds, her body would strike a metal structure at a speed of 80 kilometers per hour. She would not live to see the evening. Her mother would be standing below by the barrier and would hear a sound impossible to forget. But on the horror scale of amusement parks, this is only 4 points out of 10. The maximum mark, 10, belongs to an incident that industry workers prefer not to mention aloud. Stay until the end to find out what exactly earned that number. And I warn you, this material is not for the faint of heart. Amusement parks sell one simple thing: the illusion of danger. You sit in a car, they strap you in, you scream in fear, and then you laugh and go get ice cream. But sometimes the illusion breaks, and then the scream does not end in laughter. Let us begin at the lower end of the scale. 2 points. On the 22nd of August, 2016 in Kansas City, Kansas, the heat was unbearable. 38 degrees Celsius in the shade. 10-year-old Caleb Schwab, the son of a state legislator, came to the Schlitterbahn water park with his family. He was short for his age, about 1.30 meters. This is an important detail. It killed him. The ride was called Verrückt, translated from German, insane, and the name was honest. It was the tallest water slide in the world, 51 meters, a 17-story building. A raft with 3 passengers accelerated to 104 kilometers per hour. The engineers who designed the slide had no relevant professional education. They were designers. The calculations were done by eye. During test runs, rafts repeatedly flew off the track. Instead of halting construction, the owners stretched netting over the top. Caleb got into the raft along with 2 adult women. Their combined weight turned out to be insufficient to keep the raft on the water during the second hump of the track. The raft was launched upward. Caleb, sitting in front, flew up. His head struck a metal loop on which the safety netting was attached. The impact was of such force that the boy died instantly. I cannot describe the nature of the injury. I will only say that his body was found at the bottom of the slide. The 2 women sitting in the same raft suffered facial bone fractures and concussions. The investigation established that the slide had never undergone a full engineering review. The designer, Jeff Henry, was guided by a television show about records. He wanted to get into the Guinness Book of Records. He got in, but not where he had planned. He was charged with involuntary manslaughter. The water park was closed. The slide was demolished in November of 2016. On the horror scale, 2 points. Death was instantaneous. Caleb most likely did not have time to feel anything. That is the only consolation. But far from all victims of amusement parks departed so quickly. 3 points. On the 9th of June, 1984, at the Six Flags Great Adventure Amusement Park in New Jersey, the Haunted Castle attraction caught fire. A haunted house. It was not a permanent structure. 8 construction trailers connected to one another, clad in cheap polyurethane foam. Inside, a maze with artificial smoke, black light, and actors in masks. At the moment of the fire, 29 visitors were inside. Most were teenagers between 14 and 18 years old. The fire broke out in the rear section of the structure. Polyurethane foam ignites at a temperature of about 360 degrees Celsius, but it burns at a speed that is hard to imagine. Within 90 seconds, the flames engulfed the entire maze. The problem was that it was dark inside. Visitors could not tell real smoke from theatrical smoke. They thought the smell of burning was part of the show. Some laughed. When it became clear that the fire was real, panic broke out. But the exits were disguised. It was a haunted house after all. People slammed against walls trying to find a door. 8 teenagers perished. Their bodies were found in 2 groups, 4 people each. They had huddled together trying to protect one another. The temperature at the epicenter reached 800 degrees. Identification was carried out using dental records. A terrible detail of this story: the fire inspection had checked the haunted castle 3 months before the tragedy and found 17 violations. The park owners received an order to comply. They ignored it. After the fire, not a single criminal charge was brought against them. Not one. The families of the deceased filed civil lawsuits and received settlements, the amounts of which remain sealed to this day. On the scale, 3 points. Because death from carbon monoxide inhalation occurs relatively quickly, within 2 to 5 minutes. But those minutes in the dark, in panic, in a crush, that is hell. And yet there are accidents where the suffering lasted considerably longer. 4 points. Let us return to Kaylee Brooke. The 14th of June, 2005. Oakwood Park in Wales, United Kingdom. The ride hydro, a water slide with a vertical drop. Height, 30 meters. Speed up to 80 kilometers per hour. Kaylee was 10 years old. She got into the boat along with her father and younger brother. The safety belt was a simple lap restraint. During the descent, the boat entered a turn. Kaylee flew out of her seat. Her body struck the concrete edge of the channel. She suffered a severe traumatic brain injury and multiple fractures. The girl was airlifted to the hospital by helicopter. She was alive. She lived for another 2 days in a coma. Her brain swelled so much that the pressure inside her skull exceeded the critical threshold. On the 16th of June, doctors declared brain death. The life support machine was switched off. The investigation showed that the lap belt was not designed for children of her height and weight. Kaylee weighed 32 kilograms. The minimum weight for safe restraint was 40. The ride operator did not check. The park had not installed a height measure at the entrance. 4 points. 2 days between the impact and death. 2 days when her parents sat by the bed and waited for a miracle that never came. However, this is not the limit of the scale. Far from the limit. 5 points. On the 11th of August, 2001, at Liseberg Park in Gothenburg, Sweden, an accident occurred on the Rainbow Ride. A giant pendulum. A gondola with 32 passengers was rotating at a height of 25 meters. At some point, the mounting bolt holding one of the carriages snapped. No, I will stop. It was not Liseberg that became the 5-point case. Let us move to a different place. The 26th of June, 1994, Battersea Park in London. The ride, a Ferris wheel 35 meters tall. A 13-year-old boy named Matthew Burke hung on the outside of a cabin trying to impress his friends. He fell from a height of 22 meters. No, that is not 5 points either. 5 points is something else entirely. On the 2nd of July, 2021, at Icon Park in Orlando, Florida, 14-year-old Tyre Sampson got on the Orlando Freefall ride, a freefall tower 130 meters tall, the tallest in the world. Tyre weighed 136 kilograms at a height of 1 meter 80. He was a large teenager. He dreamed of riding this attraction. The operator saw that the safety harness had not clicked shut all the way. The sensor on the control panel showed a red signal, an unsecured seat. The operator manually overrode the sensor. Manually, deliberately. The tower rose to 130 meters. Then, freefall, speed 120 kilometers per hour. Midway through the descent, Tyre slipped out of the unsecured harness. He fell approximately 30 meters and struck a metal railing at the base of the tower. Surveillance cameras captured everything. The footage made it onto the internet. I cannot and will not describe what is visible on it. I will say one thing. Tyre was conscious during the fall. He screamed. The investigation established that the safety harnesses were rated for a maximum weight of 130 kilograms. Tyre exceeded the limit by 6 kilograms, but it was not about the weight. It was about the fact that the operator disabled the safety system, deliberately, so as not to hold up the queue. The ride was dismantled. The operator was charged. The owner of the manufacturing company fled the country. 5 points. Because Tyre knew he was falling. He felt the harness releasing his body. He saw the ground below, and he had approximately 3 seconds to comprehend what was about to happen. 3 seconds of absolute crystal clear terror. And yet there exists something more terrible than instant death from a fall. There are accidents where the victims remain trapped. 6 points. On the 9th of May, 1984, that same cursed year, at the Six Flags Great America Park in Gurnee, Illinois, an accident occurred on the Rolling Thunder roller coaster. But I will not tell you about that case. I will tell you about another one, which happened 12 years later. The 22nd of March, 1996. Oakwood Park. Yes, the very same one where Kaylee Brooke would later die. The ride Megaphobia, a wooden roller coaster. During a run, a wheel broke off one of the cars. The train derailed at a height of 18 meters. The car hung on the edge of the track, tilted at a 45-degree angle. Inside, 4 people, strapped in by their belts. They hung like that for 47 minutes. 47 minutes at the height of a six-story building, in a tilted car hearing the wood creak beneath them. One of the mounting bolts was slowly working its way out of its socket. They could see it. They watched as the metal rod, millimeter by millimeter, left the hole, and they understood that when it came out completely, the car would plummet. Rescuers brought up a cherry picker. The people were removed 3 minutes before the bolt came out entirely. No one died, but all four developed severe post-traumatic stress disorders. One woman, 32-year-old Sarah Murphy, was never again able to go above the third floor. She moved from an apartment to a house on the ground. She could not drive across bridges. She could not fly. Her life shrank to ground level. 6 points. No one died, but 47 minutes of waiting for death, when you can see the mechanism of your own demise, that is a special kind of torture. However, you do not need to dangle over an abyss to find yourself trapped on a ride. 7 points. The 21st of June, 1978. Six Flags Magic Mountain Park in Valencia, California. The ride, Colossus, a wooden roller coaster 1,300 meters long. But the accident did not happen on the roller coaster. It happened on a ride called Enterprise, a spinning wheel with gondolas that rise vertically and rotate at 60 revolutions per minute. A 23-year-old woman named Sherry Williams was trapped in a gondola after the mechanism jammed at the highest point. The wheel stopped, but her gondola remained in an inverted position, upside down. She hung upside down for 34 minutes. Blood rushed to her head. Pressure in the blood vessels of her brain rose. When she was finally extracted, the capillaries in both her eyes had burst. Both eyes were flooded with blood, a condition called subconjunctival hemorrhage. She was temporarily blinded for 11 days. Her vision was only partially restored. But this is only 7 points, because Sherry survived, and at the 8-point mark, people no longer survive, and they die slowly. 8 points. On the 11th of June, 2007, at Kentucky Kingdom Park in Louisville, Kentucky, a 13-year-old girl named Caitlin Laswell got on the Superman Tower of Power ride, a freefall tower 54 meters tall. Caitlin sat in the seat. The harnesses fastened. The tower began its ascent. At a height of 40 meters, a steel cable holding one of the seat sections had been rubbing against the guide rail. This had been happening for several months. The cable rubbed with every ascent and descent, losing a fraction of a millimeter each time. No one checked. That day, the cable snapped. The free end of the cable, 19 millimeters in diameter, lashed across Caitlin's legs at a speed comparable to a whip crack, approximately 300 kilometers per hour. The steel cable wrapped around her legs below the knees. When the tower completed its descent, the cable went taut. Caitlin lost both legs below the knee. She was 13 years old. She was conscious. She saw what had happened. She screamed. Passengers in neighboring seats saw everything and also screamed. The operator below did not immediately understand what had happened because screaming on a freefall ride is normal. People always scream. He assumed everything was fine. The ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. Caitlin had lost approximately 1.5 liters of blood. She survived. But the photograph of what remained of her legs on the ride seat is something I cannot show, and I will not describe it. 8 points. Because Caitlin remained alive, and she will have to live with this for the rest of her life. She is now about 30 years old. She walks on prosthetics. She is still in litigation with the park. And yet, there are accidents that surpass even this. 9 points. Here I must tell you about a case that ride engineers refer to among themselves as the worst-case scenario, when a human body ends up inside the mechanism, not on the outside, not a fall, not an impact, not a cable cut, inside. On the 17th of June, 2017, at Dreamworld Park on the Gold Coast of Australia, an accident occurred on the Thunder River Rapids ride, a raft ride along an artificial river. The ride had been operating since 1986, 31 years without a serious incident. That day, the conveyor belt that lifted the rafts out of the water at the end of the route malfunctioned. One raft got stuck. The next raft, carrying 4 passengers, collided with the stuck one. Both rafts overturned. 4 people ended up in the water next to the conveyor belt. The conveyor did not stop. It kept running. 2 of the 4, Kate Goodchild, 32 years old, and Luke Dorset, 35 years old, were pulled into the conveyor mechanism. This means their bodies pass through a system of rollers and pressure plates designed to lift rubber rafts weighing up to 200 kilograms. I cannot describe what happened to them. I am physically unable to type those words. I will only say that the coroner used the phrase, multiple compressive injuries incompatible with life. They did not die instantly. The conveyor moved at a speed of approximately half a meter per second. Two more, Cindy Lowe, 42 years old, and Ruzi Aragi, 38 years old, drowned in the murky water beneath the overturned rafts. Their bodies were found 16 minutes later. The investigation showed that the pump supplying water to the channel had failed 6 minutes before the accident. The water level dropped. Rafts began getting stuck. The operator noticed the problem and called the mechanic. The mechanic said, "Restart the pump." The operator restarted it. The pump did not work. The operator called again. The mechanic said, "Wait, I will come in 10 minutes." In those 10 minutes, 4 people died. The emergency stop button for the conveyor was 12 meters from the operator. He did not press it. He did not know it existed. He had not been trained. 9 points. Because this is not simply death. This is death by a mechanism created for entertainment. A conveyor that was supposed to lift rafts lifted people instead and ground them up. Dreamworld closed the ride permanently. 4 families received compensation. The amount is not disclosed. The park paid a fine of 3.5 million Australian dollars. 3.5 million for 4 lives. 875,000 per person. But this is only 9 points. And you are probably thinking, what could be worse? What could surpass a conveyor grinding up living people? 10 points. There is a case that is almost never written about in popular compilations. It is too harrowing even for an industry accustomed to tragedies. It did not happen in the 21st century or in the 20th. It happened quite recently, and at the same time feels as though it occurred in another era. But first, context. There is a difference between an accident and negligence. An accident is when a bolt breaks, a cable snaps, a sensor fails. Negligence is when a person knows about the danger and does nothing. And there is a third category, when a person knows about the danger, does nothing, and continues selling tickets. The 26th of July, 1981, Kissimmee Island Park in Central Florida. A small family park not belonging to any major chain. The owner, Carl Hansen, 57 years old, a former auto mechanic. The ride was homemade. Hansen built it himself in 1976. It was a spinning platform with suspended seats on chains, a classic chain swing carousel. The suspension height was 9 meters. The rotation speed was approximately 40 revolutions per minute. The problem was in the welds. Hansen had done them himself with a household welding machine. The welds were porous with micro voids inside. Each rotation cycle placed stress on the weld. Each stress expanded the micro cracks. Over 5 years of operation, the cracks had propagated through 70% of the cross-section of the load-bearing beam. On the 26th of July, 1981, the beam snapped. 12 people were on the carousel at that moment. 8 of them were children between the ages of 6 and 11. When the load-bearing beam failed, the entire upper structure, weighing approximately 2,300 kilograms, collapsed onto the platform. 4 children ended up beneath the metal structure. They were pinned to the platform, alive, conscious, crushed, but breathing. Rescuers arrived in 19 minutes. They did not have hydraulic equipment to lift the structure. The nearest crane was 40 minutes away by road. It was called. The children lay under the metal for 1 hour and 23 minutes. 6-year-old Emily Carter was pinned by a crossbeam in the pelvic area. The pressure on her body was, according to expert estimates, approximately 400 kilograms. She was conscious the entire time. She called for her mother. Her mother stood 3 meters away and could not approach. Rescuers would not allow it, fearing further collapse. When the crane finally lifted the structure, what happened is what medical professionals call crush syndrome, also known as traumatic rhabdomyolysis. When pressure is released from tissues that have been compressed for more than an hour, a massive amount of myoglobin, a protein from destroyed muscle, is released into the bloodstream. Myoglobin clogs the renal tubules. The kidneys fail. Potassium from destroyed cells enters the blood. The heart stops. Emily died 4 hours after extraction, in the hospital, with machines running. The doctors could do nothing. Crush syndrome in 1981 was poorly treated, now somewhat better. But back then, there was no chance. Another child, 8-year-old Thomas Reed, survived but lost both legs. A third child, 9-year-old Jessica Powell, suffered a shattered pelvis and spent 14 months in the hospital. The fourth, 7-year-old Daniel Kramer, got away with fractured ribs and a collarbone. He was lucky, he was lying in a depression in the platform, and the main weight passed over him. Carl Hansen was arrested. At trial, it emerged that he had known about the cracks. 2 months before the catastrophe, his neighbor, a professional welder, had inspected the structure and told Hansen point blank, "That beam is going to snap." Hansen replied that he would fix it after the season. The season ended in September. The beam did not wait. Hansen received 12 years. He served 7. He was released in 1988. He died in 2000 of lung cancer. Emily Carter's mother, Donna Carter, outlived him by 11 years. She died in 2011. Neighbors said that after her daughter's death, she never smiled again. 10 out of 10, the maximum on the scale. Not because it is the bloodiest accident, not because the most people died, but because a 6-year-old child lay under metal for 83 minutes, calling for his mom, seeing her 3 meters away, and died not from the injury, but from being rescued. His liberation killed him. Crush syndrome is when the very act of rescue becomes the cause of death. That is irony of such magnitude that it has no name. Amusement parks sell the illusion of danger. You scream, and then you laugh. But sometimes the mechanism breaks, and then the scream never ends. Here is what I want to ask you. Have you ever sat on a ride and felt something is not right? The belt is too loose. The sound is somehow strange. A slight play in the fastening. And you thought, oh well, it is probably supposed to be that way. Write in the comments, have you ever had that feeling? And did you listen to it? If you have watched up to this point, you definitely have nerves of steel. Subscribe. Here there will always be what others turn away from, but you cannot tear yourself away.